Hey guys, welcome back. Today I am going to make a start in my December Not Quite Daily album. I've got these two photos here and they were not taken on the day. It's just how it is. I did keep the cups, however, and so I set up this photo and I want to do a little page with it. But what I want to do is create something, and I'm going to do that in Silhouette Studio, and I'm going to show you how. So I've kind of had this idea about how I want to document these two photos of our, I'm going to call it our Christmas coffee order. That makes it sound like we have a non-Christmas coffee order. We don't really. But I wanted to show the differences between my order and Shane's order, and I want to do that with kind of a little like a little segmented framed card. I've got an idea in my head. I'm just not 100% sure if it's going to work. So I'm going to mock it up in Silhouette Studio and see how we go. So the first thing I want to do is just create my base page, and that is going to be 4 1/4 by 8 1/4. And I'm literally just going to make it white so that I can see that's going to be my page. Might zoom in a little bit here too. And I want 3 segments on this page. So I want to be able to stamp his and hers. I want a segment that's going to have my photo in it, and I want a segment that's going to have the details of our order in it. So I guess first of all, I want my stamping area, and I think if I make it like a 1/4 inch smaller, so that's going to be like 3.75. Oops, 75. And I want to use my Spencer alphabet, and they're about 1 1/4. No, 1 3/4 high. So if I make this pretty much like what it is, 2 inches high, and I'm just going to center this box. And the other thing I want to do is I want to give this like a little, very little line so I can kind of see how it looks. And then the next box, I'm just going to copy and paste this. The next box is going to be for my photo, and so I think I want to make my photo square. So if this is 3.75, I want this to be 3.752. Move that down a bit, and that leaves me this little portion at the bottom here to add in my kind of details. I think that all looks about right. So I'm going to group that and just make sure it's sitting in the middle of my page. And the only other thing that I want to add is add in my kind of details down here. I'm just going to do it in list form, I think. So I'm going to add some like little check boxes and then add my journaling in. So like I said, I had this vague idea about how I wanted to put these details in. It involved check boxes, and as I'm starting to just create this box, checkbox shape, it's just kind of it's not really what I intended it to be. I want to include a little bit more information. I want it to look a little bit more kind of form-like rather than just these check boxes. So yeah, it wasn't really working for me. I just think I want to add more down here, so I'm gonna go and grab a pencil actually and just plan out what it is that I want to write down here, and then I can see how best to lay that out. Right, so I've gone away and had a little sketch. Honestly, I find it's always easier to draw something out with pencil for me than it is to just work it out on screen like this. So I drew it out, and now I'm going to put this into a digital form. I decided instead of kind of starting with the boxes, I was going to start with the actual information that I wanted to include. And there's kind of 3 categories for that. I want to include the size, the flavors that we got, and a few sort of additional notes. So I am sticking with that 3 box box kind of formula that I had, but I'm going to add a couple of little dividing lines in here so that that bottom box becomes sort of 3 categories, and then I can work from there and sort of adjust as I need to be. So I used my text tool and I typed out those three kind of categories, and as I lay them in, I can already see that the positioning of those boxes isn't quite right. The last thing I kind of want to position in here is I do want to add those check boxes back in. I'm going to do that as far as the size goes. I quite liked the checkbox look. I do want to put that in rather than just typing out what size it was. So I added in the 4 sizes, and then I remembered that someone had left me a comment to say that there was actually a 5th secret size. And I decided to put that in because it filled up the space a little bit better. So the space is what I've got to work with, and 5 looked better than 4. So despite the fact that I didn't even know there was a 5th size until well afterwards, I've added that in. So then I've added my check boxes back in a much smaller size this time. You can see me just working out where things are going to go. I've given everything a little bit of extra space and then moved those lines over a little bit. And it does take me a little while to get everything kind of the same line width. So I'm just changing the width of those lines. I think I ended up printing them at like 0.25 points. The reason I don't need them to be like super thick, you will see very shortly. Now I did use 2 different fonts, so I used a kind of sans serif font, I can't remember exactly which one it was, for the categories, and then I am using Remington Noiseless for the typewriter font, just to kind of differentiate that it looks like maybe it's a form that someone's filled in. You know, I usually type my journaling, so I figured I would probably end up doing that a lot in my album, and so I'm going to replicate that here. So that's my basic layout done. I just need to, I grouped all of that, copied it, pasted it, because I need 2, one for me, one for Shane. And all I'm doing is changing the flavor and adding some extra notes in here, or adjusting the notes for both of them. I did run into this tiny problem here where I went to write a second line of one sort of point, and Silhouette Studio is a little bit restricted for adjusting fonts like this. I can't adjust this line width without adjusting all of it, so all I did was copy the text that I had, paste it, and just move it where I wanted it to. I'm going to adjust those lines for the boxes again. And then I can go ahead and just group those. I'm going to line them up on my paper. I'm just printing A4, and go ahead and print that out so that I can carry on making my layout. And so this is my printout all laid out. Now, when I printed these out, or when I laid it out for printing, I made it super simple on myself and lined everything up against the outline of the A4 paper so that I can just go ahead and trim those at 4 1/4, both pieces, and then it's ready to slip into my page protectors. The other thing I had to do was print out those photos and trim them down so that they would fit into the middle boxes, which they fit perfectly. And I'm ready to go. Now, what I wanted to do with these little forms to give them a little bit of texture, you can see here, I have run those through my sewing machine. So I've pretty much just traced around all of the lines that I created in Silhouette with black thread on my sewing machine. Yes, it did take a lot of time. I was as careful as I could be, and I love the results. Now, to keep everything looking clean, what I'm doing is using a needle, and I am threading back all of these front threads through the holes that the sewing machine made onto the back, and then just taping down those thread edges. And it leaves me with these totally clean, stitched forms. So this was the kind of vague idea I had at the start, and I'm so pleased with how that turned out. It could have been a super huge disaster, in which case I probably would have just reprinted them and just had the printed lines, but I love the texture that the stitching gives. It kind of just makes these really plain form sort of printables just a little bit something extra. So this is definitely something that you could do on any kind of printable with lines. If you don't have a sewing machine, you could definitely hand stitch that as well, although I would suggest that would have taken even longer. Now, like I said, I wanted to use my Spencer Outline Alphas. I'm just stamping his and hers into the top using some red ink just to mimic the color in those cups on this really black and white page. And the only other embellishment I'm going to do on here is add a couple of little puffy stickers. These are from Rosie Studios. And when I was stamping, I swapped those pages around. And so I've put the stickers in the wrong place. So I'm just going to swap those back the way I want them. Place the stickers in, and that is these pages all done. Gotta say, I'm super stoked with how these turned out. They are perfectly flat, which I love, and I just, kind of pushing the boat out and not adding too much to this album is working out nicely for me. If you enjoyed this video, please give it a thumbs up, and don't forget to subscribe to my channel if you haven't already. If you want to keep watching, there are a couple more videos on screen. Otherwise, I'll see you next time. Bye guys.